Hello there everybody. Today, I'll be seeing if you can play PC games with a $20 graphics card. More specifically, this used Radeon HD 7570 that I got on eBay. So, when paired with a relatively low spec system, can the 7570 actually play popular games ranging from CSGO to Doom? I guess we'll find out. So for a quick spec rundown of the 7570, it features 1GB of GDDR5 memory on a 128-bit memory interface, it's got one DisplayPort and one DVI-I port, 480 stream processors, a core clock of 650 MHz, and it supports PCIe 2.1. So generally speaking, this thing doesn't seem super powerful on paper. Actually, looking at the card, it's a fairly basic single slot card with a dark blue PCB, it doesn't require any external power, making it good for older or pre-built systems, and it has a glossy black shroud with a single red fan. And now on to testing. For testing, I used the HP pre-built from the $100 gaming PC build video and added some more RAM, but as for basics, it has an Intel i3 550, 8GB of DDR3 RAM, a 160GB hard drive, Windows 10, and a 300-watt power supply. This definitely isn't the most powerful system in the world, but I think that using this system caters to those who are considering this card, because those people probably won't be rocking the latest and greatest hardware and still pick up a $20 GPU. So starting off in CSGO with high settings and FXAA at 1920 by 1080, we're getting a minimum of 51 frames per second, a max of 85, and an average of 67.3. For all of you who have been requesting CSGO benchmarks, you'll be pleased to know that the 7570 plays CSGO with ease, and the frames stayed in the high 60s quite consistently, making the game enjoyable to play. Next up, in the BioShock Infinite integrated benchmark with low settings at 1080p, the frame rate minimum was 15.7, the max was 53.6, and the average was 32.2. Not amazing, but playable at the least at 1080p. In Rocket League with quality settings and no anti-aliasing at 1080p, the minimum was 41, the max was 63, and the average was 51.3. Pretty good results even for the quality preset, which kept the game looking decent most of the time. With Overwatch at 1080p with a 75% render scale and no anti-aliasing with low settings, the FPS minimum was 30, the max was 57, and the average was 40. The game felt alright, and no sudden dips in frame rate meant that the game was very playable even in fast-paced situations. As for Project Cars at low settings, given that this is on the more demanding side, I tested the game with low settings at 1080p and 720p. And as you can see, the results are interesting, as with 1080p the minimum is 22, the max is 30, and the average is 26, while at 720 the minimum goes to 29, the max becomes 53, and the average becomes a very good 42.5, making this game very ideal at 1280 by 720. I did the same thing for the Shadow of Mordor integrated benchmark, although at 1920 by 1080 I tested the game at the lowest possible settings, while at 720p I tested the game with the low preset, which is slightly better. So at 1080p we're getting a minimum of 18, a max of 30, and an average of 24.6, which isn't great at all. And at 720p with the ever so slightly more demanding settings, we're getting a minimum of 26, a max of 42.4, and an average of 33.4 FPS. So in more demanding games, it's clear that the 7570 can handle them surprisingly well, just with the resolution turned down a bit. Okay, so maybe not for all of the most demanding games. In Doom 2016, the system couldn't really handle it due to the combo of the first gen i3 and the 7570, and even at the absolute lowest settings at a whopping 800 by 600 resolution, the minimum was 14 FPS, the max was 43, and the average was 21.1. Basically, this can't handle Doom in its current configuration, although it would probably run better on an i7 or i5 test bench. And so those are the benchmarks. As you could see, in the most popular games, the card could play them very well at 1080p, with CSGO running at well over 60 FPS at high settings. However, moving into more demanding games, while some won't run very nicely at all, some actually become very playable at 720p at slightly playable settings. So overall, the HD 7570 is actually a pretty killer esports title card for a measly $20, but can still cope with titles like Shadow of Mordor. As long as you don't mind turning down the settings and maybe the resolution, this would make a great low power upgrade to any low-end system, and with a bit of eBay deal hunting, you could buy a 7570 for even less than $20. If you enjoyed, then leave a like. If you want to see some more, then click that subscribe button. Of course, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.